Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Exceedingly Abundantly podcast. And I am doing something a little bit different today. I'm doing a little pre-recording because there's a lot going on that I have going on today. So I'm not going to be able to do it live, but I wanted to make sure that this was available to you today as scheduled. You're still able to put your comments, below, and I will be able to check them and be able to respond to them. But anyway, just wanted to let you know, give you a heads up that this is a recording. So we may not go as long as we normally do today, but let's see how it goes. Anyway, I wanted to just welcome you. Welcome to the Exceedingly Abundantly podcast. It's brought here to you by Exceedingly Abundantly by Joanne McDermott. And let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so you should be able to see my screen right now. All right, and you can still see me in the corner there. So again, welcome to Exceedingly Abundantly. And Exceedingly Abundantly, we meet every second and fourth Saturday of the month. Here we are in the month of May. School year is going to end in just a couple of weeks. So I'm kind of looking forward to it. And I imagine that the children are too, praying for everyone, all you students out there. You're either taking finals or about to take finals. So welcome. Remember that. Today is the second Saturday. We'll be meeting again, excuse me, in a couple of weeks. So again, my name is Joanne McDermott. I'm a board certified functional nutrition counselor and a mental health coach. I help people heal from their health challenges by looking at the underlying root causes. What's the bottom of it? I'm kind of like a private investigator when it comes to the body, looking at the underlying root cause, and then using diet and lifestyle. Food is medicine, to promote that healing or reverse that illness. I have to throw in my disclaimer here. The information provided is intended to promote overall well-being and is not a substitute for personalized professional care that you may be receiving. Viewers are encouraged to be empowered by learning how the body functions, allowing them to take an active role in their own health goals and decisions. So this is all about helping you, empowering you. You know how you feel more than anyone else. You know what your experiences are. So it's good for you to be able to be a part of your healthcare and be able to make decisions for yourself, what you believe to be, best for you. So today we're going to be talking about emotions. In fact, for the month of May, we're going to be talking about emotions. And when I say emotions, I am particularly thinking about anxiety and depression. That's a very popular, very common emotion that we are feeling that's kind of robbing our health. So let's start off by looking at what the definition of emotion is. It's a natural, instinctive state of mind deriving from one's circumstances, or can come from your mood or your relationship with others. So I highlighted there the word instinctive because it's just kind of there. It's instinct. It's innate. It happens, without you even really thinking about it. And that feeling comes about or is derived from the circumstances that are going on around you at that moment, or your interaction or relationship that you are having with other people. So that's what our emotions are. Now, our emotions are basically categorized into two parts or two groups. You have the positive emotions, right? And our negative emotions. And that really pretty much sums up all of the emotions that we feel. So our positive emotions, things like hope and happiness and love and faith, right? And then Those negative emotions are things like hate and regret and fear and guilt and shame and just feeling sad and maybe even angry. So it's pretty much sums up all the emotions, the different emotions that we feel. I love to use this little emotion wheel or emotion chart because it helps us to just kind of narrow down even further. How do we really feel? But how do we really, really feel? So just to kind of give you an example here, we have let's look at angry. Okay, some you might be feeling angry, but why do you feel angry? Are you feeling angry because you're frustrated? Or are you feeling angry because you've been let down? And then let down is even broken down more. Are you feeling let down because you're having feelings of resentment? You know, something happened and that just really wasn't fair. That shouldn't have happened. Or you're feeling let down because you've been betrayed. You know what? They said they were going to be there for you, or you expected them to be there for you, and they were not. So this is kind of a fun little chart because it helps us to figure out, okay, why am I feeling these feelings? And kind of just dig down further and learn and see what's really going on deep down inside. As I said, as a functional nutritionist, I like to look at what's the real reason behind it, the underlying that's causing, what we're seeing at the surface. So let's talk about our minds a little bit. Our mind is into two parts. It basically comprises of the conscious and the subconscious, which is also known as the unconscious. So the conscious and the subconscious. So let's take a look at the conscious. The conscious mind is really that which we are aware of, kind of when we're in the here and now. That's the part of our mind where we're thinking, we're analyzing, we're trying to figure it out. That's what we think and we plan. And that's where our short term memory is. So, for example, let's say that you know that you need to get from point A to point B. You don't exactly know how to get there, and you might look at your GPS. So, that's kind of your conscious mind. Oh, you know what? I don't know how to get there. Let me look at a map. Let me look at my GPS. You go plug in the address, and then you're following that GPS. You're in the here and now. You're thinking, you're analyzing, you're planning. And then let's say you finally get there and you're getting ready to eat. And you might think, and somebody might ask you, I don't know, while you're there, hey, what did you eat for breakfast this morning? And or I don't know, let's say you go into the doctor's office or something and they're taking your vital signs and they ask you, okay, you know what, we're going to test your blood sugar. Did you eat anything this morning yet? Right. And so you're able to remember, you know what, I didn't eat anything yet. Sometimes we forget even what we ate, but you at least would remember, you know what, no, I didn't have anything to eat at all. Or, oh, you know what, I just had, I stopped by the store, the restaurant, and I got myself a like a protein shake. And so that's your short-term memory. So that's kind of when you're in the here and now, you're present, you know what's going on, and you remember just those things that had taken place an hour or less ago. Okay, but let's look at the subconscious or unconscious mind. Whoops, we went forward a little bit too quickly there. Okay, so our subconscious mind, that is actually 90% of our brain. That's most of our brain. And that is where looking at number 4 here, that's where our involuntary body functions happen. So that's the part of our brain that controls the part of our body where we're not necessarily in the here and now. And so it just happens. It happens without us thinking about it, analyzing it, planning it. So, for example, our involuntary body functions. So that would be things like your heart rate or your breathing. When you're sleeping, you're completely out of it, oblivious to what's going on in the world. Your heart doesn't stop beating. Your breathing doesn't stop. It keeps going. So you're not like intentionally thinking about it and planning it. Okay, heartbeat. You're not doing that. That's the subconscious or unconscious mind. That would also be like our habits. Let's say that Monday through Friday, every single day you go to work and you take that same route. But let's say one day it was a holiday, you had that day off, and oh, you know what? I'm going to try to go to the gym, this morning. Go in the morning instead of the evening. You hop in your car and you drive, and the gym is in the other direction. But halfway through going to work, you find that, oh, wait, I'm heading off to work, but there's no work today. I wanted to go to the gym today. What am I doing? And so what happened is it became a habit, and you just kind of do it instinctively, automatically. You're not thinking about it. Those are the things that happen in our subconscious mind, the things that happen kind of automatically without us even having to think about it. That would even be our addictions. Our addictions are those things that we just do, and it kind of really has control over us as opposed to us having control over it. We cannot say stop. We're struggling with it, and that's what makes an addiction an addiction. And that addiction is actually in that subconscious, part of your brain. So that's why sometimes when you are addicted to something, it's not entirely your fault. It's gone into the instinct, the impulse, and you're just doing it. It's just happening without you even thinking about, what you're doing. In that category also is our emotions and our feelings, our long-term memory as well. Things that, memories that you have, maybe you're an adult, memories that you have as in your childhood. And it's those things that just kind of stay with you forever. But, even our emotions and our feelings, is there any of you that wake up in the morning and decide, I'm going to be frustrated today, or I'm going to be angry today? We don't wake up and make the decision to feel that way. We just feel that way. Sometimes we feel that way and we don't know why. Sometimes we feel that way and we do know why. It's because something happened. But we don't get up intentionally telling ourselves and planning and analyzing, this is how I'm going to feel today. Now, I know, you may have heard things like, all right, happiness is a choice and you got to make the decision to feel that way. But a lot of times you don't feel that way to begin with. And so you have to make a conscious decision that, okay, you know what? I don't want to stay down here. I'm going to try to feel better. I'm going to try to think more positive. But again, you're working against, the flow. The feeling is, those negative emotions, and we don't choose those emotions. We just kind of feel that way. So our emotions and our feelings are in that subconscious part of our minds. So now let's talk about the part of our brain that deals with our emotions. There's something called the limbic system. The limbic system is certain parts, a certain area within our brain that deals specifically with our emotions and cause us to feel the feelings we have, whether they're those positive emotions or those negative emotions. So that limbic system is primarily made up of 4 different compartments within your brain. So we're just going to look at them really, really quickly right now. So for example, we have the hypothalamus. Now the hypothalamus, that is the part of your brain that gives the signal for certain hormones to be produced. And these are hormones that helps us with our sleep, manages our mood, helps us to feel hungry or not hungry anymore. And it's pretty amazing because it's really that part of our brain. It's taking note of what's happening outside in our environment, and it causes us, and it's taking note, and then so we end up feeling a certain way, and as a result of the way we feel, because our body is trying to always make sure we're okay and keeping things balanced and helping us to survive. And so it'll send out certain signals for hormones to be released so that it can help to make our environment, safe, or make us feel comfortable, or make us do whatever it is that we need to do so that we are surviving. And then there's the amygdala. I'm gonna come back to that. Let's go down to the thalamus. So the thalamus, that is the part of the brain that is responsible for processing sensory information. So again, we're observing what's going on around us. We have the five senses. So it's tapping into our hearing, our tasting, our sight, what we're touching. So based on our senses, it's taking in information and it's processing that information. And then depending on how we feel, that's when a message will go to the hypothalamus, and then the hypothalamus will trigger for certain hormones to be released to help to make things balance or make things better. And then you have your hippocampus, and your hippocampus is responsible for your ability to form new memories. So with every experience that we have in our environment, it is creating a certain memory. Sometimes it's a memory for good, sometimes it's a memory for, not very good, bad. And then finally, going back to the amygdala right now, the amygdala, that is the part of our brain which allows us to experience these emotions. So feelings like anger, anxiety, fear, these are examples of negative emotions, but they could be positive emotions. But that's the real central piece of where we actually feel these positive or negative emotions. And then it ties it in with a certain memory for good or memory for bad. So now let's look at an experience that this person is having here, just to give another idea of, how the brain is working here. So, and this is a person that comes from an Asian background, and she is in a restaurant and she's just eating this Asian food. Maybe it's Japanese food because it kind of looks like sushi there. And maybe when she was a child, she grew up, in Japan. And, grandma, mom, aunties, they cooked from scratch. And the food was just absolutely delicious. And she enjoyed that time, when she was a child, and, it's dinner time or mealtime, and the family gathered together, and you just enjoy the company and you enjoy the food. So let's say now she grows up, she becomes an adult, she moves over to the United States, and she's lived in the United States for many, many years now, not now eating all different types of food, but she has an opportunity one day to go to a Japanese restaurant, and she sits there and she's eating the food, she's smelling it and she's eating it, and she's just savoring that moment. It's not only the food that's good, but she gets this really good feeling inside because it's bringing back a memory. It's reminding her of how good the food was back at home, and how that time of just coming together with family was such an enjoyable and very comforting time. So she's finding this experience very comforting and very satisfying. And that's the emotional part of our brain. That's the emotional part. That's the part of the brain that is just working right now, and that's being triggered and moved. And that's kind of how our brain works sometimes. And again, it's in the subconscious part, because she didn't decide that, okay, I'm going to feel very comfortable, comforted and happy right now. It's just something that is in her mind, in her memory. And this experience is just giving her a really good experience right now. And then sometimes the opposite happens. There are people, soldiers, that go out to war, and unfortunately, it's at a time when there's a lot of fighting going on, and there's helicopters flying and bombs being dropped and explosions being seen and people dying and blood everywhere. And sometimes our soldiers when they come back home, they're no longer in war anymore. Things are at peace, but they're unsettled and they suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. And so what happens is, even though they are in a country where there's peace, they're no longer fighting, they're no longer, in the military, and they will just see a helicopter pass by. Anybody see a helicopter pass by sometimes? And you think, oh, well, what's going on? What's that? And I mean, they have like these helicopters that transport people that have been in terrible accidents, and um, they need to get to a major hospital because the local hospital cannot treat, the injuries that they have. So the helicopter will come, will get them, and, bring them over to the hospital in the bigger city. So there's different reasons why a helicopter goes by. But now this particular soldier, he sees that helicopter go by, and all of a sudden he starts to get anxious, and he starts to get tense, and he starts to feel a lot of anxiety and feel very uncomfortable. And so this is an example of that memory that got stored in there, that long-term memory, in our subconscious mind. And just hearing something familiar, it triggered that feeling, it triggered that thought, even though the person is not in that environment anymore. All these negative emotions are being felt. And, all of that is happening because of what has been stored, what is going on in that subconscious part of our brain. It's interesting, these emotions, these feelings that we get, we don't wake up saying that, oh, I want to feel post-traumatic stress disorder today. It just happens. It happens, but it's because of, memories that's been stored and experiences that we've had. Ultimately, we want to feel happy, right? We want to be able to experience the positive emotions more than we are experiencing the negative emotions. And that is not only going to give us good mental health, but it's going to also give us good physical health. I did a talk on how negative emotions can make us sick sometimes. So you can go and check that. I'll see if I can leave a note later on a link to that. But how negative emotions can make us actually physically sick. So we want to always be in the happy more of most of the time. But I know sometimes it's hard. It's hard. This world that we live in, there's a lot of negativity, going on here. Even when we are trying to be positive, even when we're trying to do the right thing, there's a lot of ugly things and wrong things that happen. A lot of us that suffer innocently. And I'm so sorry, for anyone that has had to experience that. And there's a whole reason and a whole story why. I mean, maybe some of you have questions. Why do good things happen? Why do bad things happen to good people? But I want to encourage you all today. We don't have control over the things that happen, in our lives. And we cannot control what other people do. We can't control things that happen. Sometimes we even have natural disasters, hurricanes and earthquakes. We just don't have any control. So how can you have that peace? Where do you get that peace from? And I would like to invite you all to consider, where God invites us to come to him. Matthew chapter 11, verse 28 and 29 says, "Come unto me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you, and you will find rest." So, Jesus is actually saying, hey, let's switch. Let's take your anxiety, your stress, your disappointments, and I'll take that, and then I'll give you, what I have, my yoke, which is light. It's easy. It's calm. We can find peace in Jesus. He is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. That's one area where we can know that it will never change. It is always predictable. He will always be loving and caring and kind and always ready to help. Now, some of you may still be confused about that or have questions about that. And I would love to be able to help you to answer those questions a little bit more. You can send me a private message. Or maybe I can do a little bit of a talk on that, but I can um, assure you, my experience and just from my learning, there is peace, and that peace is in Jesus, is in God. And I encourage you all to ask your questions and find out why and how that is, because it is difficult. It is hard to find that peace and that rest because life is so unpredictable and there is a lot of negativity. But there's more to the story, and I encourage you to find out more about that. All right. So now sometimes, in life, we do get sick. We get a cold, right? Uh, we don't feel good. We have a headache. We get runny nose. We might have to just kind of stay home for the day. And there's no way. I just feel so weak. That happens to us sometimes. We get sick. And so we try to get some rest. We try to make sure we're drinking our water, doing all those things to help get over this cold that we're having. And it usually does go away after a while, right? A couple of days, maybe it might last a week, but at least we're getting better and better, and it eventually goes away. But sometimes it gets worse, right? And that's when we start to get a little bit concerned and we decide, you know what, I think I should go to the doctor because my symptoms are getting worse. So we go to the doctor. Sometimes he'll give us medication and, maybe some type of antibiotics. And we go home, we take our antibiotics, and then that usually works, right? We get better. But sometimes we're taking these antibiotics and our symptoms are still getting worse. So we go back to the doctor, and the doctor, maybe he might or she might start to get a little bit concerned and say, okay, you know what? Let's do some tests. And then that's when they might decide that, okay, they're going to draw some blood. They look deeper to see what's going on. And that's when we kind of start to get concerned, because even after the medication that the doctor gave, it's not going away. You're not getting better. And that is when we start to get a little bit concerned. And that's when we have to look deeper, into what's really going on inside of your body here. Or maybe some of you have experienced where, okay, you may not necessarily be having any severe symptoms. It's keeping you from carrying on with your daily activities. I don't know, maybe a little bit, but you get these symptoms. You're just getting symptoms. For example, a person may be experiencing unexplained weight loss. So you're not necessarily sick, but you're having these symptoms and you can't explain the reason why. The person is not going on a diet. They're not intentionally trying to lose weight, but they are. And it's concerning. You wonder, well, what's going on here? And usually what we do is, if those symptoms continue to progress over a period of time, it doesn't stop, or it's getting worse. Last week I lost like 5 pounds. I lost another 5 pounds again. That's a total of 10 pounds. Why am I losing this weight? It's just happening, and you're not even trying to do anything, or, nothing has really changed in your life that you know of. That is when we go to the doctor. We explain what's happening, and they will do some tests. Let's find out what's really happening inside your body. Hopefully it's nothing serious, but gotta check it out here, because it's making you worried. It's making you uneasy. Well, the same thing can happen with our emotions, or with the mental side of us. We kind of talked about the physical side of us, but the same thing can happen with our emotions, our mental side of us. So in this picture, for example, these men are definitely experiencing some anxiety, I would say. They're being chased by a bear. How would you feel? Now, it looks like they were just peacefully out in the middle of the country there, and they were doing some filming, right? And they were just admiring and enjoying the scenery, and wow, let's get some good shots. And all of a sudden, so they were calm, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, look, a bear, run for your life. And they went from feeling peaceful to feeling a lot of anxiety. And as a result, their body responded right away. They started running. They even are running with their equipment. Their bodies went through a certain change. And actually, there was hormones that were released that made them aware and made them conscious, made them realize that, oh, there's some danger here. And even changes in hormones being released that gave them that extra energy to run faster than they usually do. And so this is a negative emotion that, these people are feeling right now. And it's helping them. It's helping them to keep safe. It's helping them to make a quick decision that we need to do something quickly. We need to move quickly. And then it's giving them the energy to move so that they are in a safer environment and they can save their lives. So negative emotions aren't always bad, aren't always a bad thing. Another negative emotion that we might feel is maybe death of a loved one, somebody that was very close to us. That makes us feel sad. Or maybe a breakup, in a relationship, or maybe didn't do well on a test that we were studying so hard for and wanted to do well. And it was going to really influence, the next steps that we take in our lives. So, we get disappointed and we feel sad, and it's normal to feel that way. But eventually, when time goes by, that sadness isn't as strong as it was during those first few days or few weeks that we felt it. And even going back to this picture here, these men are feeling very anxious right now, but after they run and they're in their car and they close the door, and now the bear is not able to get to them, so they're safe now. That feeling of anxiety starts to go away. They start to relax. They start to feel more normal. They start to feel, happy again and not afraid and scared. And even with the negative emotions, they're at its climax when that experience first happens. And it's different for everyone as far as how long the climax of that negative emotion lasts. But it does eventually go away. It does eventually get better. You don't feel the anxiety at the heightened state, as you did before. You don't feel that sadness, as strong and profound as, you did before. It does subside a little bit. It does go away. But then what happens when you are feeling sad for no reason at all? Nothing happened. Nobody died. You didn't fail a test. You didn't break up in a relationship. You didn't have a negative experience, but you're feeling just really sad. It's kind of like that person that was losing weight. They're not trying to go on a diet, but they're losing weight. What's going on here? But it's not only feelings of sadness that we may experience for no reason at all. It's even anxiety. We might feel anxious, kind of feel like, oh, this bear is chasing us, but there is no bear chasing you. And these feelings just kind of come inside of you. Where is it coming from? Why are you feeling this way? But I want to tell you, it does happen sometimes. We feel sad for no reason at all. We go into this depression for no reason at all. Or we feel anxious for no reason at all. And when that happens, that's when we have to try to investigate and find out what is going on here, because that is not normal. We should not be feeling that way. And even for those times when we do feel sad and we do feel anxious, and there's reasons for it, but we're finding that it's not going away. It's lingering. It's like that person that had those cold symptoms and it's not going away. This cold is just not going away. I've had it for a month now. It's time to investigate and find out what's going on. These are things that really do happen. We feel sad, we feel anxious, it's not going away, or we feel this way for no reason at all. So, if that happens to you, this happens to people, we have a sickness, that happens to us sometimes, but it's just a matter of learning how do we heal, from that sickness. So let's go look at maybe a couple of different reasons why are we not getting out of this slump? Why am I not getting over this addiction? Why am I feeling like why am I experiencing these panic attacks all the time? So these feelings happen because, or the healing, the improvement is not happening the way it's supposed to. Here's some of the reasons why. It boils down to a hormone imbalance. There are so many different hormones that are flowing through our bodies. When we hear hormone imbalance, I think we first think of those reproductive hormones, the progesterone, the estrogen. But we have so much more hormones, above our reproductive hormones. There's a hormone for everything. And when there's a hormone that makes us feel anxious, there's a hormone that makes us feel sad, happy. There's a hormone that makes us feel hungry. There's hormones that are released to help trigger our immune response. There's just so many hormones that regulate how our body operates. I just named a few here. I named the ones that deal mostly with feelings, as opposed to, metabolism or anything like that. But let's start with neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters are those hormones that deal specifically with our mood. They have to do with examples of those are serotonin, GABA, and dopamine. Serotonin is considered the happy hormone. When we don't have enough serotonin that's flowing through our system, then we feel sad. So if you are feeling sad a lot, or for no reason at all, or you just can't get out of the slump, it could be because your body's not producing enough serotonin. Your serotonin levels are just really low. It's not where it should be. It's always on the low side. So you are going to feel like, tense or not happy, depressed. GABA too, that helps with our mood. Sometimes that can help with our sleep. In fact, there's something called SSRI. It stands for selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. And that is a category of antidepressants. Sometimes a person that suffers from depression will be prescribed the SSRIs. And what it's doing is trying to get your body to take in more serotonin. And then there's dopamine. Dopamine is that reward hormone. It's when you experience something wonderful and great and joy, just a serendipity, that dopamine is released. And what that actually does is it motivates you to want to do that activity again. Dopamine is that hormone that's kind of responsible for those addictions. And dopamine is a good thing because it does motivate us to do that activity again. But what happens is sometimes our senses are overstimulated. Like, when food, for example, they're over flavoring the food, putting the extra salt and fat and sugar in it. So our taste buds get overstimulated, and then it causes us to need more to be satisfied. And so we end up kind of going into that cycle of falling into that addiction, food addiction. And we just can't eat one chip. And it's just because it's an overstimulation. So now when there isn't that overstimulation and things are taken in taken in gradually in time, or in the adequate quantity, then we don't fall into that addiction. Okay, then we have these hunger hormones. That's the ghrelin and the leptin. And those are the hormones that kind of tell us when we're hungry, okay, hey, it's time to start eating again. Or, you know what, you're full now. That would be the ghrelin. And then the hormone that gets released to let us know you're full, you're satiated, okay, you can stop eating now. That's the leptin. And sometimes those hormones are a little bit off. And we may end up overeating, eating more than we need to, more than we should. And that is because those hormones are just out of balance. So you see, sometimes it's not always all about willpower or lacking self-control. And then we have those reproductive hormones, the estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. Progesterone is also known as, that happy hormone. And testosterone is the one that kind of gives us energy and, okay, I'm ready to go. I just want to be active. And not having a lot of that. In fact, men, when they get older, maybe age 50, 60, 70, the testosterone levels go down and they find themselves not as motivated. They're happy just kind of sitting back in the rocking chair and rocking and watching everybody. Whereas, can you imagine a little child doing that? They just want to go. Or, a young man, they got a lot of energy. So sometimes, that low hormone is what makes us just not feel good, not feel well, not feel like going on. And then we have the energy hormones. I call them the energy hormones, but these are the hormones that give us the energy to go out there and get at it and like ready to just kind of tackle the world. That would be your cortisol or your adrenaline. Those are the hormones that get released when a person is anxious and because they see this danger and, man, I need to run as fast as I can. That's the adrenaline being released. Or the cortisol, that kind of is what makes us ready to go and tackle the day. If that cortisol level is too low, we feel tired, we feel fatigued, we don't have much motivation. So that depression that we're feeling for no reason at all, or we're not getting out of it, or that anxiety that we're feeling for no reason at all, or we do, but it's not changing back to peace. It could be as a result of just hormone imbalances. Something as simple as that. Nothing may not necessarily be wrong with you as far as your willpower or your desire to want to do better. You might be experiencing some shame and guilt, but it could just be that your hormones are out of balance and they need to be placed back in balance. You may need some help to get them back in balance. Well, that's the big question, right? How do we get those hormones to be back in balance? Well, I would love for you to be able to join me next time. Fourth Saturday of the month is so about 2 weeks is when we're going to be meeting. We're going to continue our discussion on emotions, things like anxiety and depression. Part 2, we're going to be exploring how do we balance these hormones? What are things that we can do to try to get those hormones to be more balanced so that we are experiencing more of the positive emotions and not the negative emotions? So we'll talk about that and things that we can do that will help us to be able to accomplish that. So I invite you to join us again. A reminder to you here, our Exceedingly Abundantly podcast. We meet every second and fourth Saturday of the month. And I would like to invite you to visit my website, journeytoabundantwellness.com. There, you can just see a little bit more of what I do and what I'm about, but you could also sign up for a free consultation. If there's anything on here that I discuss, you have more questions about it, whether it's how you can have more peace or a maybe related to certain mental or physical challenges that you've been having and you want to be able to discuss that more, there's a button there on my website where you can click for a free consultation. So, I encourage you to tap into that, take advantage. It's free. Also on my website there, you should be able to access my Facebook, and also my Instagram and my YouTube channel. So thank you again. I hope you guys have a wonderful Saturday. Enjoy the weekend. The weather is starting to get warmer. And for you, those of you students, just hang in there for another week or two and finish strong. And then you'll have a nice break. Take care. And I will see you next time.